Welcome back to the Tasty Cooking Creations channel. Ever pondered on the process of crafting homemade fresh hot jam donuts? Crafting donuts is not as complicated as you might imagine. The crucial steps cover forming a supple dough, injecting it with a sweet jam filling, and frying until they reach a golden hue. The concluding touch of coating the donuts in sugar contributes an additional layer of sweetness. By the conclusion of this video, you'll be a pro at making your own hot jam donuts. To hit the subscribe button for more delectable cooking creations. First things first, gather all the ingredients you need. To whip up these delicious homemade fresh hot jam donuts, we'll need a few key components. Let's start with the dough. For this, we require all-purpose flour, which forms the base of our donuts and gives them their structure. Next up is granulated sugar, lending a hint of sweetness to the dough. We'll also need some lukewarm milk to activate the yeast and keep the dough soft. Speaking of yeast, we'll need dry yeast to help our dough rise and create that airy texture we love in donuts. A couple of eggs will add richness, while unsalted butter will provide the dough with a tender crumb. And don't forget a pinch of salt to balance out the sweetness. Now onto the star of the show, the jam filling. You can use any jam you like, but for a classic touch, we're going with raspberry. The tart sweetness of this ruby red preserve will be the perfect contrast to our sweet donuts. Finally, we have the sugar coating. This is simply granulated sugar and optionally some cinnamon. The sugar will give our donuts a sweet, crunchy exterior, and if you're using it, the cinnamon will add a touch of warmth and spice. There's also the matter of the frying oil. We recommend using a neutral oil like canola or vegetable oil. These types of oils have high smoke points, which means they can handle the heat of frying without breaking down and giving your donuts an unpleasant flavor. It's worth mentioning that the quality of your ingredients can make a difference in the final product. So try to use fresh, high-quality ingredients whenever possible. And don't worry, while the list might seem long, the process is straightforward and enjoyable. With all these ingredients ready, we're set to start baking. The foundation of a great donut lies in its dough, so let's get kneading. Creating the perfect dough is a labor of love and a bit of a science experiment. To start off, we'll need warm milk, not too hot, not too cold. The temperature is crucial because we're going to add yeast, and yeast thrives in a warm environment. This tiny organism is what makes our dough rise, giving us those fluffy, airy donuts we all crave. Next, we'll add sugar to the milk. The sugar not only sweetens the dough, but it also feeds the yeast, helping it to work its magic. Stir the milk and sugar until the sugar dissolves, then sprinkle the yeast over the top. Let it sit for about 5 minutes, or until it becomes frothy. This is how you know the yeast is activated and ready to go to work. While the yeast is activating, let's turn our attention to the dry ingredients. Sift together the all-purpose flour and a pinch of salt. The sifting process aerates the flour, making the donuts lighter and more tender. The salt, on the other hand, enhances the flavor and controls the yeast's activity, ensuring that our donuts don't overproof. Now let's bring everything together. Make a well in the center of the flour and pour in the yeast mixture. Then add melted butter and beaten eggs. The butter adds richness and flavor, while the eggs provide structure and moisture. Begin to combine the wet and dry ingredients, either with a wooden spoon or your hands. It might be sticky at first, but keep going. Kneading is a key step in developing gluten, the protein that gives the dough its elasticity and chewiness. Once the dough starts to come together, transfer it to a lightly floured surface. Here's where the real fun begins. Kneading. Use the heels of your hands to push and fold the dough for about 10 minutes. You'll know it's ready when it's smooth, elastic, and springs back when lightly pressed. After kneading, place the dough in a greased bowl, cover it with a clean kitchen towel, and let it rise in a warm place. This process, known as proofing, allows the yeast to ferment the dough, creating gas bubbles that make the dough rise and give our donuts their characteristic lightness. Proofing can take anywhere from 1 to 2 hours, depending on the temperature of your kitchen. But don't rush it. Great donuts can't be hurried. You're looking for the dough to double in size. This is a clear sign that the yeast has done its job. Now that we have our dough, it's time for the next step. What's a jam donut without the jam, right? Now that we've got our dough rising, let's dive into the heart of our donut, the jam filling. We're aiming for a jam that's sweet, but not overwhelmingly so, with a consistency that's thick enough to hold its shape, yet soft enough to ooze out with each bite. To start, we'll need about 2 pounds of fresh ripe berries. You can use strawberries, raspberries, or even a mix of your favorite berries. The key here is to use fresh and ripe berries for the best flavor. Rinse your berries thoroughly, then hull or de-stem them. Next, we're going to cook our berries over medium heat in a large pot. Add about a cup of sugar and a splash of lemon juice. The sugar sweetens, while the lemon juice adds a touch of acidity to balance out the sweetness and helps to bring out the flavors of the berries. Stir your berries gently, allowing the sugar to dissolve. As the berries heat, they'll begin to release their juices. Bring this delightful mixture to a simmer and let it bubble away for about 20 minutes. As your jam simmers, you'll notice it start to thicken. This is the pectin in the berries reacting with the sugar and lemon juice. The key to a perfect jam consistency is patience. It's tempting to rush the process by turning up the heat, but a slow and steady simmer yields the best results. Once the jam has thickened, give it a taste. If it's too sweet, add a little more lemon juice. If it's not sweet enough, sprinkle in some more sugar. Remember, this is your jam, and you're in control of the flavor. When you're satisfied with your jam's taste and consistency, remove it from the heat. Allow it to cool before using it as your donut filling. And there you have it, a homemade jam that's bursting with flavor, ready to transform our dough into delightful jam-filled donuts. With our jam ready, we're halfway through the process. Now comes the fun part, shaping and filling the donuts. Once your dough has had its beauty sleep and has risen to double its size, it's ready to be transformed into delicious donuts. So let's get to it. First, dust your work surface with a little flour to prevent the dough from sticking. You might want to get your rolling pin out too. We're going to need it. Gently deflate the dough and give it a quick knead to get any large air bubbles out. Then roll the dough out until it's about ½ an inch thick. You're looking for a thickness that's just right. Not too thin that the donuts will be flat, but not too thick that they won't cook properly. Now, for the shaping. You'll need a round cutter for this. Aim for something around 3 inches in diameter for the perfect sized donut. Press the cutter into the dough and give it a twist. You should be left with a perfect donut shape. But what about that classic donut hole in the middle? Well, for that, you'll need a smaller cutter. About 1 inch will do the trick. Repeat the process until all your dough is transformed into donut shapes. Don't forget to save those donut holes. They make for a delightful little snack. Once you have your donut shapes, it's time to let them rest again. Yes, more waiting, but I promise it's worth it. Cover them with a clean kitchen towel and let them rise for about 15 minutes. They should puff up nicely and become soft to the touch. Alright, now on to the filling part. Remember that jam we made earlier? It's time to bring it back into play. You'll need a piping bag fitted with a long, narrow nozzle for this. Fill the bag with the jam and gently insert the nozzle into the side of each donut. Squeeze a generous amount of jam into the donut, but be careful not to overfill. You want a nice surprise of jam in each bite, not a jam explosion. Once all your donuts are filled, it's time to prepare them for frying. Lay them out on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper, making sure they're not touching. This is important, as they'll expand a bit more during frying. And there you have it. You've successfully shaped and filled your donuts. They're starting to look like the real deal now, aren't they? Just a few more steps and you'll be enjoying fresh homemade donuts in no time. Our donuts are now ready for the final step. Can you guess what it is? It's time to bring the heat. Let's fry these donuts. Now that we have our donuts shaped and filled, it's time to take a fiery turn. We're about to fry these beauties until they reach that perfect golden brown hue that screams deliciousness. The process is straightforward, but it does require precision and attention. First things first, we'll need a heavy-bottomed pot and enough oil to submerge our donuts completely. Canola oil is a great choice for frying donuts because it has a relatively high smoke point and a neutral flavor. Pour the oil into the pot and heat it to about 375 degrees Fahrenheit. A candy or deep fry thermometer is a handy tool to keep around to ensure the temperature stays consistent. Once the oil is hot, it's time to gently lower the donuts into the pot. Be careful not to overcrowd the pot. We want each donut to have its personal space to achieve an even cook. Depending on the size of your pot, you might be able to fry 3 to 4 donuts at a time. Now, patience is key. Let the donuts fry undisturbed for about 1 to 2 minutes on each side. They should start to puff up and turn a beautiful golden color. The magic of frying is that it not only cooks the donut, but also gives it a delightful crunch on the outside while keeping the inside soft and fluffy. Once our donuts have achieved that ideal color, use a slotted spoon or a fry spider to carefully lift them out of the oil. Let them drain on a wire rack set over a baking sheet or paper towels. This helps to get rid of any excess oil and keep our donuts from becoming too greasy. While our donuts are still warm but not too hot to handle, it's time to give them a sweet, sugary coat. You can use granulated sugar, powdered sugar, or even a cinnamon sugar mix for this part. Just place the sugar in a shallow dish, roll the warm donut in it, making sure to get an even coat all around. The warmth from the donut will melt the sugar slightly, creating a wonderful sweet crust. Remember to work quickly with the coating process. The sugar sticks best when the donuts are still warm. And there you have it, crispy on the outside, soft and jammy on the inside, and coated with a sweet, sugary crunch. And voila! You now have delicious homemade hot jam donuts. Enjoy! There you have it, the art of making homemade, fresh hot jam donuts. We kicked things off by breaking down our ingredients, ensuring we had everything we needed to embark on this donut journey. Then we got our hands dirty, preparing the dough and giving it the love and attention it needed to rise to the occasion. With our dough set aside, we turned our attention to the jam filling, a sweet and tart concoction that would soon find its way into the heart of our donuts. Next, we shaped and filled our donuts, transforming our dough into the familiar ring shape we all know and love. Finally, we fried and coated our donuts, adding that final touch of sugary goodness. But remember, this is your donut journey. Feel free to get creative. Experiment with different fillings, shapes, and coatings. Remember, the best donuts are the ones you make yourself. Happy baking! And don't forget to subscribe for more tasty cooking creations.